Hey, it worked. All right, good. Woo, close call. No, it's fantastic. Great job. I'm so happy. And no people are in here yet, but they should be any second now. We're usually within the first minute. Or nobody loves me. Okay, we have no people at 0 minute. I mean, at 1 minute, which is okay. We'll get it figured out here. We got it. We're having connection issues, but I just got told we got it figured out. So, all right, people are coming in. There's one. All right, it's working. I would have been in a panic right now if it wasn't for you. So you're the champ. Unless that's you in there, in which case no one's in here yet. But I don't think it's you. I think it's somebody else. But I'll know when it goes up above one. We just need that second person to come in so I know it's not you. I'm getting there. 4 people. Hey, what's up? All right, it's working. I'm so happy. We were having technical issues, and I would be in a panic if I was by myself. But fortunately, I don't have to be the technical person. So, hello, Ben. 7 people. Okay, now we're rocking. Good job. Hey, huge thumbs up on this one. You nailed it. It is working. Yes. And what I would love for everybody to do, because it's the first class, I normally give 5 minutes to give people time to log in, but since we had a delay on the login, we're going to go a little bit longer just to make sure nobody misses anything. So please, when you log in, post where you're from. If it's the U.S., what state you're in, and if it's outside the U.S., just what country you're in. More details is fine, but at least that. Let's see where everybody's coming from. Isn't this the best Australia time, or is this just West Coast time?
No, West Coast.
It's what?
It's West Coast.
Okay. Minnesota, Buffalo. My family's from Buffalo. True story. Utah, Illinois, Colorado, Bay Area. Yeah, my college station, Texas. Awesome. Cleveland. Love Cleveland. Ithaca. Hey, Duncan, I lived in Ithaca a couple years ago for a winter. About 5 years ago, there was that winter where it didn't snow and it was warm all winter, and the ski resorts didn't open up. I was there for that one. Everybody said the weather would be so bad in Ithaca, and it was beautiful. It was like 50 degrees every day. But that was also weird. Temecula, Oregon, Oklahoma, California, beautiful. So everybody, just we will always. Oh, right on. We always, or I will always start 5 minutes after we start. That way, people have time to log in. I am going to give it a couple extra minutes though, just because we were having login difficulties. Um, so I just don't want anybody to miss it. So I'll just gonna stick around until we stop seeing people popping in. Dallas, Omaha, Sheboygan. I love Sheboygan. That's where Barry Schultz is from, obviously. And it says Volrath is the last name. That's the name of the course, right? Volrath. Brunswick. And I think we should have. We're going to wind up with about 60 some odd people in this group. First time, we're still learning. Oh, you are in the right place. I will boldly tell you that I am the best in the world at this. And this is very risky behavior on my part because I'm telling you that before we've even started, which basically puts the pressure on me to be right. It's not like afterwards when it works, I'm like, oh, I told you I was good at this. No, I'm telling you I'm good at this before we start. By the way, are my glasses all cockeyed? Oh, they're all bent. I'm looking, it looks like my glasses are on sideways, which I guess they are. Oregon, Canada, my best friend is in Montreal right now as we speak. And Oregon, super bent. St. Louis, Missouri, 60 people. All right, I'm gonna give it like 2 more minutes. We're starting a little bit later because of our login problem. 64 people. Yeah, people are still coming in. Fortunately, my technology manager, partner, whatever you want to call her, was able to figure out what was going on. But this is our third class of the day, and the first 2 went just fine. So we have no idea. The video with Ben. Yeah, Ben is cool, man. He's a nice guy. His whole family was great. His wife was nice. His kids were cool. Yeah, I mean, I was a fan before, but I'm a bigger fan of him as a person. Saskatoon? Sorry. I was reading it as Saskatchewan, but Saskatoon, Canada. Very cool. From Michigan, but live in Denver. I lived in Denver for a couple of years. 73 people. All right, let's give it like another minute or two. Like I said, where people are logging in late because we were late to get in. Greenville, South Carolina. Okay, so we'll give it 1 more minute. Close to St. Louis. Hopefully west of St. Louis, not east of St. Louis. Billings, Montana. Love Billings. Saskatoon. I got it correct? Well, I had to actually it's spelled phonetically. I think it is. I think it's just that when you see it, you think Saskatchewan at first. So it kind of screws people up. Founded by way of New Jersey, waiting for you to come out. I was in New Jersey last year. I won a tournament out there. I think I won. Did I win the New Jersey tournament? I think I did. East of St. Louis. Okay, well, depends on what part east of St. Louis. I love St. Louis. It's a great town, but there's definitely parts of it that are probably don't want to break down in. All right. Y'all ready to get started? Very cool. All right. So we're going to start off with the good news. Actually, that implies that there's bad news coming. There's no bad news coming. This is all good news. We're going to start off with good news. This works. You all aren't guinea pigs. I had an entire 3 classes that started 5 or 6 weeks ago, and this is a bit of a beta test for them because I've been teaching more disc golf than anyone who's ever done it in the sport. I believe I'm better at this than anyone. I've done hundreds and hundreds of online private lessons back when I was doing private lessons, so I know the online thing works. But the idea of having a class, especially one that's set up this way, hadn't been done before in the sport. So that first group of people were all guinea pigs. I thought I put something together that was going to be awesome, and the way I constructed this would work, but I didn't know. But now I can tell you definitively it absolutely 100% works. Everything has been beta tested on other people. You all now just get to show up and okay, yeah, your buddy's in the first class has 50 feet on his drives. It works. I love it. So this is going to work for everybody here. Nobody here is going to be unhappy at the end of this 6 months. I promise you. All right, so let's start with, I'm going to give you just a little bit of background on me. Some of you know this, some of you don't. Actually, let me start by saying this class right here is the longest class in the next 6 months. We're going to be meeting twice a month, and because they're going to do introductions, they're going to talk about how the class is going to go, and then it also happens to be the same day we're talking about the most complex part of throwing, which is the backhand. This class is going to be around 2 hours. If it gets late for you, it's not a big deal. It's going to be recorded. You won't be able to ask questions in real time, but which I'll explain in a minute. You're going to always be able to ask questions in the Facebook group, so you'll still get your questions answered. So don't feel like you're missing out if it gets late and you got to get up early to work. But this class is going to be long. But I don't set a clock on this. I don't say, well, you get an hour of my time today. Time is based on how long it takes to accomplish what we need to accomplish, and I'm not going to rush through any of this. So there's a lot to cover today. Just plan on it. Put on a pot of coffee. Let's see. I'm trying to see if these are better glasses. These are better glasses. Okay. All right. So first, just a little bit of quick background on me. I have been playing forever. I played my first. Sorry. Yes, it's going to be definitely recorded for later. I will. The last time I can't really see the questions coming in. So if it feels like you're being ignored when you write questions, it's because you're being ignored on purpose. But I need to get to certain spots, but I will be stopping at certain times to ask questions. If you don't get a question answered, please just be a squeaky wheel, write it again. I will not shut the class off for the evening until any more questions. Everyone's good. So, but just again, be a squeaky wheel. If you get ignored, sorry, but we got a lot to cover. All right. So about me, I've been playing forever. I played my first round of disc golf on the world's first course when it was the only permanent disc golf course in the entire world. I literally started at ground zero in this sport. Played every day growing up, dropped out of school when I was 15 years old to play every single day. Toured for years in the 90s, back before players toured. Before there was any money whatsoever, I was on the road playing disc golf tournaments for I'll put the quotes around living, because I often won tournaments and didn't even win enough money to cover my gas that week. But, that's what we did back then. And there was not a whole lot of teaching in the sport. Teaching in disc golf basically consisted of an article that came out in the magazine every 3 months. It would be 4 paragraphs and a picture. It would be called something like How to Throw Further. And the articles were not good. And the reason I know they weren't good is that I wrote them. Some of them anyways. But we didn't know how to throw farther. I mean, we didn't know nothing. We knew more than the person who knew less than us. We certainly knew some, but it's not like today. Now, today, we know the right and the wrong way to throw. Back then, the sport was still being invented. So I came up with the idea, what if I travel around the country and I go from course to course and meet with, club to club, and I do a throwing clinic. I'll bring the whole club out and I'll teach everybody how to throw correctly. For example, I would go to town and I would teach everybody in town how to throw sidearm. If you ever decide to watch any YouTube videos from tournaments in the 90s, you'll see one player in the world throwing sidearms. Me. People called it a trick shot. And the whole time I'm laughing, thinking, what are you talking about, trick shot? You mean that trick shot where I get to throw the hyzer, the easier shot in every single hole? It's not a trick shot, obviously. But no one else was doing it. Now, I didn't invent the sidearm. I didn't invent any of these throws, but nobody was using it in the 90s at a high level. So I traveled around the country teaching everybody sidearm. I was teaching the X step. I ended up going to 220 cities before any other touring pro had gone to one to teach disc golf. Since then, I took some time off from the sport and I came back. But a year ago, February, I did my 500th clinic in 500 cities in Nashville. I wrote the first book on disc golf throwing technique, released the first 3 instructional DVDs on disc golf throwing technique. And when I look back at all of the teaching I did, I don't think it was very good. I mean, I'm proud of it. I'm proud of the effort. It was certainly better than anything else out there when there's nothing else out there. But basically what I was doing, like at my clinics, was live YouTube videos. And most of you, if not all of you, have had this experience. There is a huge gap between listening to someone say, take a disc and do it this way, and then you going out and doing the thing that they show you. If there wasn't a gap between them showing you and you doing it, none of you would be here right now, right? So I was doing live YouTube videos. Better than nothing, not great. I did not learn how to teach disc golf, not really, until just about 5 years ago. Because 5 years ago, I started focusing on private lessons. I ended up doing I did 1,200 private lessons in 3 years around the country, about half in person and about half by video. That's where I learned how to teach. All these theories I had at my clinics, in my book, as soon as I was standing in front of somebody and I'm telling them to do something, if they can't do the thing I'm telling them to do, then I needed to invent a method to get them to do it. And as soon as I invented a method to get them to do it, I would apply that to the next person and it wouldn't work for them. I had to go back to the drawing board and had to recreate a new modified method that would work for both of them. Basically, through 1,200 attempts, sometimes failing along the way, that's when I figured out how to teach. I got to a point, and this is where we're at today, where every single person I work with, and this means every one of you, if you follow my method, you will be able to throw well and throw correctly. Every single pro and every single disc golf teacher, we all agree 99% on the correct way to throw. The thing that I do that's unique, that no one else in the world is doing what I'm doing, the way I'm doing it, is the method to get you there. This works better than anything else out there. So y'all are in the right place. And again, I know it sounds like I'm being arrogant. I'm actually being bold because I'm telling you this before we start that it's going to work, not afterwards. And I say, told you so. I'm telling you beforehand. You're going to get this if you follow my instructions as I teach them. Now, there's basically two ways that most of you have been taught probably to disc golf. The first is, if anyone has ever said to you, you just need to figure out what works for you and do what works for you. If you've ever heard that advice before, don't do it. It is really bad advice. You cannot just do what works for you. Whatever feels right to you does not trump the physics, the biomechanics, right? The way the body moves. There is absolutely a right and a wrong way to throw a golf disc, period. However, the second way of learning disc golf is equally ineffective, and I'm pretty sure just about every single person has done this. And that is, you have either watched a pro in person, you've watched a pro on YouTube, or you've listened to a tutorial video, but basically you try to emulate someone else throwing the disc. You slow everything down and you try to do what they do. And y'all have figured this out by now, probably. That doesn't work. It's not your fault. It's not a failing on your part that you couldn't emulate their throw. The reason it doesn't work is that everybody's body is different. Every single person is a different height, a different shape, a different size. We have different amounts of muscle mass in different areas, different flexibility. We've got scar tissue. We have injuries. Even our joints don't align at the same degree angle from one person to the next. It is impossible to watch another person throw, do exactly what they do, especially with their timing, and have it work for you. Unless you had the exact same body, which you don't. So you can't emulate a person's throw, yet you can't do whatever works for you. This is the method that I've developed that works. There are certain rules that you must follow, no matter who you are. You must do thing A, you must do thing B, and you must do thing C. Those are rules. All the best players do A, they do B, they do C. You have to do those also. However, how your body moves from step A to step B and step B to step C is completely individual to you. That doesn't mean you do whatever you want, whatever works for you. You got to follow the rules, but you cannot follow the rules the same as anybody else. Your body will dictate how it moves as long as you follow these rules. And it took me a lifetime to figure this out, but this is what's going to work for you. So, the way the class is going to work, and then we're going to jump to the backhand, is that every single month there's going to be 2 live classes. Some of the months there's going to be 2 classes on one topic, like 2 classes on the same topic. Like we're going to do backhand this week and we're going to do backhand next week. Other classes we can cover it all in just one class. But there's going to be 2 classes every month. I'm going to give you step-by-step instructions for you to follow, as well as all the flexibility where you can diverge from the plan, but also the rules you must not diverge from. But I'm going to give you a roadmap step-by-step that you're going to work on. Then what you're going to do, and this is why this online class is going to work, is that throughout this process, you are strongly encouraged to be shooting videos of yourself, posting it to the group for form reviews. Now, you are not required to do that. If you're not comfortable being in front of the camera, you can shoot videos and give yourself form reviews. It's not that that won't be effective, but it won't be as effective as if you put yourself out there to the group. Because here's what's going to happen. You post the form reviews. Number one, I'm encouraging all the students to give feedback. This isn't like a form review page on Facebook where every person can just spout off some opinion about how you're supposed to throw. It's nonsense. Instead, every single person giving an opinion will have gone through the exact same class with the same material that you're working on, which means everybody in the class is qualified to say, I heard to do this, but you're not doing that. You need to do that thing that we were told. So other people are qualified to comment on you, and you're qualified to give comments to the other players in the group as well. I want you to give comments. But in addition to that, there's going to be a total of 3 trainers in this group with you. 2 trainers and myself. So not 3 trainers. There's 2 trainers in the group and myself. Both of the trainers in the group, and they're going to be in the group every single day, just like I am, have gone through my seminars. They've gone through my classes. They've also gone through training sessions where I've trained them on how to train people with this method. So the students are giving feedback, but the trainers are also giving feedback, and they're also, it's a checks and balances system. They're making sure that the students aren't giving bad information. So if you or someone else does give incorrect information, one of the trainers is going to say, that's not quite right. Let me explain how it works. And then I am responsible for making sure that everybody, including the trainers, is giving out the correct information, which means when you post a video for form review, it will end, no matter what, with you getting the correct information for what you need to change. Then you change it, you work on it, you shoot more video, you post it again. The thing about this format, the way we're doing this, and it took me so long to figure this out, is that I was never going to put up a series of instructional videos and then charge some amount of money for you to watch the videos. Those are YouTube videos. It's helpful, but it doesn't work. I did not start offering this class until I figured out a process by which we could have that interaction, that back and forth that is necessary for this method to work. You're going to need feedback. So if you don't take advantage of the feedback, you're missing out on a lot of what you're paying for. So I won't bug you to post if you don't post, but you're encouraged to. Everything's going to be positive. All right. Now we'll get started. I'm so excited. It's my 3rd time today doing this class. I never get tired of teaching. It's like the whole time I'm teaching, I'm thinking, oh, I got to cover this material again. Oh, I've said all these things before. But at the same time, I'm also just so excited because you're going to be posting in a couple days or next week. Oh my God, I just drew 70 feet further. Oh my God, I just reached hole 12. I never thought I could reach hole 12. And so I love that so much. This is fun. All right, so we're going to start by talking about the backhand. So first off, if you were asked to make a list of all the different things you do on a backhand throw, based on your observations, what you figured out, all the YouTube videos you watched, you could probably come up with a list of 50 different things that you do on a backhand. You don't do 50 things on the backhand. It would be impossible to do 50 things in like 3 seconds. When you throw the backhand, you're going to do 6 things. And you're only going to do 6 things. When you do those 6 things, the other 44 things on that list are all going to happen automatically as a byproduct of doing those 6 things. So that's the first thing I need you to do. I'm asking of you is to take a leap of faith and just do 6 things and trust that everything else is going to work if you get those 6 things right. With 3 exceptions. You do those 6 things, the other 44 things happen automatically. There's still 3 things that you can do wrong even once you've done those 6 things right. But this is a reasonable number. So all you're doing on the backhand is 6 things, and then you must not do 3. And if you do this, you are throwing correctly. Now, when I talk about the backhand, 2 things. Number 1, I'm going to talk about the backhand as a 3-step run-up. The reason why is that all backhands are 3-step run-ups. If you were to do, let's say, a 50-step run-up, a 50-step run-up is 47 of this. You turn to the side, and you go 1, 2, 3. The throw takes place on 3 steps. Now, I'm not saying you're only going to throw in 3 steps. Eventually, you are going to add more than 3 steps to your run-up. You're going to build a momentum, or you're going to be able to generate more power that way, for sure. However, I've learned that I don't need to teach anybody how to take 2 steps and turn sideways. So I just omit that from the teaching because the first time you try that, you'll do it perfectly. Everyone does. What's important is what takes place in those 3 steps. That's the mechanics of the throw. That's the timing of the throw. So I'm only teaching you those 3 steps, but I'm not telling you you're stuck only doing 3 steps. 3 steps is your starting place. That's number 1. And number 2, everything I'm going to talk about with the backhand is based on the backhand being a power throw. Okay? I don't know why this worked out this way. I didn't intentionally set it up this way, but this is just what evolved. All the correct fundamentals to throwing the backhand are geared towards throwing power shots. Real quick, by the way, make a note. Group 2, we got to mention the 60% power. I don't think we did. Can you might write that down? Sorry. I just realized something I left out from group 2 that I won't forget in your group. So y'all dodged a bullet on that one. I'll have to go back and tell them. But anyways, everything is geared as a power shot. Basically, if the game wasn't disc golf, if the entire game was how fast can I make this object leave my hand, everything I'm going to teach on the backhand is geared towards making this leave your hand as fast as possible. That is the core mechanics to the backhand. You actually modify your technique in order to throw short finesse shots. So 3-step run-up, everything is based on a power throw. And I don't need my glasses because I'm not looking at the comments. All right, you're going to do 6 things on the backhand and only 6 things. Number 1, everything takes place along a line. Now, the reason it takes place along a line is that aiming your backhand isn't a skill. Aiming your backhand throw is about creating an imaginary line, the direction you want the disc to go, and then placing every part of the mechanics on that line. And if you do that, the disc will fly on the line you drew. So the idea, I'll move the camera back a bit. So the idea is that if this were the tee pad, and this were the target, and you were throwing a flat, straight shot right at the target, that's easy. You draw an imaginary line right down the middle of the tee pad, straight to target. If, however, that was the tee pad, and the target was here, and there was an obstacle in the fairway, but there was a gap in the trees over here that you had to throw the disc through the gap, and then arc the disc to the target. You would ignore the tee pad because it probably points to the target. You would ignore where the disc is going to land. Instead, you would draw an imaginary line from the tee pad at an angle across the tee pad, straight at the gap in the trees. The fact that the disc is going to turn once it goes through the gap in the trees is the angle you put on it or the disc you chose. Neither one of those is relevant to the mechanics of the throw. Everything takes place along a line. So, the basic idea is this. You've drawn an imaginary line, the direction you're going to throw. You square up your shoulders 90 degrees on this line. You set the disc right above the line you drew. If you step up the line, push the disc up the line, X step up the line, while you reach back down the line, your arm's now pointing up the line, you step up the line and pull the disc on the line, the disc will fly down the line if your timing's right. When I'm working with groups at seminars or clinics, this is the only throw that I actually demonstrate on the backhand. If we were outside right now, it wouldn't make any difference because you wouldn't see the disc, so it doesn't matter. But what I demonstrate is when I reach back, I am not going to aim this disc. All I'm going to do is reach my arm back. As soon as I do that, all you have to do is look straight at my arm, and you're going to see, before I even throw, exactly the line the disc is going to fly on. Because I'm going to plant my foot, and the disc is going to fly straight up that line. I would throw the disc, and then I would explain, I could not make that disc go 5 degrees left of that line or 5 degrees right of that line unless I turned my entire line, whether it's my body or my backswing or something, 5 degrees to the left, or if I turned something 5 degrees to the right. Now, throughout the next 6 months, we're going to talk about a bunch of myths or misconceptions in the sport. This is the first of many. If you're throwing a backhand right-handed, and I will apologize to the left-handed players right off the bat, everything's going to be taught right-handed because I'm right-handed. The only way I can teach. Fortunately for all us right-handed players, everybody out there who's left-handed has developed a skill of reversing right to left because you, as a left-handed person, you've had to do that. If I taught the class left-handed, the right-handed players, myself included, would be lost. So thank you, lefties, for being able to flip around, reverse it. But I will be explaining everything right-handed. If you're throwing a right-handed backhand and you miss your shot to the left of where you're aiming, the most common expression is you had an early release. Or if you pull it to the right, I've released late. It's a myth. You didn't release the disc. If the disc misses to the left, it's not as if, oh, if only I had held on to that disc for 3/100ths of a second longer before releasing it, it would have gone more right. You didn't release the disc. All you're doing with the mechanics of the backhand, everything we're teaching, is taking this object, accelerating this object up the line that you drew. The object is now moving up this line, increasing its speed. At some point, since your arm is attached to your body, your arm will no longer continue forward. That disc is going to leave your hand straight up the line you drew. It's completely involuntary. It just rips out of your hand. You don't release the disc. If you miss your line, it's because you did something wrong. So, number one, because we won't be doing stuff wrong by the time we're done. Number one, everything takes place along a line. Number two is timing. And timing is actually incredibly simple. Now, I'm very careful to differentiate between simple and easy, None of this is easy. If it was easy, you would have watched the video and just done it. Everything's going to take work, but it is simple. Hold on a second. I'm going to make my screen bigger because I keep getting this pop-up that distracts me every time. Manager person, can you help me with this?
Well,
Can you either, I apologize to everybody, the business suite notifications keep popping up on the screen and I can't focus because, do I want to just shut off notifications or can I make the screen bigger? Okay, I'll just turn off notifications. I apologize. I'm going to leave the screen for just 1 second. And no, we don't want to open it. We just want to, I got to turn off the notifications real quick. I think we got to go to settings notifications. I'm sorry. I had this notification that kept popping up on the screen and it was distracting me and you're not going to get my A game if I'm distracted. So I apologize. Okay, so timing is actually incredibly simple. Doesn't mean it's easy. So first off with timing, you need to simplify your mechanics as much as possible. Every single thing you do when you throw, you have to replicate every single one of those things every single time exactly, or else your timing's off. The more different things you have to replicate, the more things can go wrong, the more likely it is something's going to go wrong. So the first thing you do is you simplify your throw, and anything not necessary to making this object leave your hand fast, you get rid of. Here is what you're left with on a 3-step run. All that's going to happen if I was throwing this direction, there's going to be 3 actions of the disc, 3 actions with the feet. So the disc is going to do 3 things. Number 1, up the line. Number 2, down the line. Number 3, up the line. I'll turn it. How about that? Okay, so the disc does 3 things. 1 up the line, 2 down the line, 3 up the line. Your feet are going to do 3 things. 1 up the line, 2 up the line, 3 up the line. That's why timing is simple. The disc does 3 things, the feet do 3 things, and nothing else. Now, the reason it's not easy is that the 3 steps with the disc and the 3 steps with the feet don't just line up together. So here's how it's going to look. So step 1 with the disc is the disc going up the line. If I'm throwing this direction, step 1 with the feet go up the line. Those steps go together. That part's easy. So step 1 with the disc and step 1 with the feet together. Piece of cake. Step 2 of the disc is the disc going backwards. However, when step 2 of the disc happens, you're going to do step 2 and step 3 with the feet. So the disc is going to go back on 2, while the feet are going to go 2, 3. And then on the 4th step, you're going to pull the disc. So that's the next key to timing. A 3-step run-up is not 1, 2, 3. A 3-step run-up is a 4 count. A 3-step run-up is 1, X step, plant, and then pull. It's only called a 3-step run-up because your feet take 3 steps, but the cadence is a 4 count. It's 1, 2, plant, then pull. Now, I'm going to explain why this is important, but I'm going to preface this by saying occasionally in the next 6 months, I'm going to spend what might appear to be way too much time on a really simple point. I want you all to understand it's always on purpose when I do this. There are certain things that after all these years I've learned they're really important, but they're far easier to do if you completely understand why we're doing them. If I can give you the analogies, if I can explain the physics and the logic behind it, if I can get you to visualize how it's going to happen, it's worth taking the time to get you to be able to do it. So this is one of those times because we're talking about timing, we're talking about snap. You need to do this correctly. So here's what's going to happen. All you're doing, the reason you plant first, is that when you're throwing a backhand, is that you're cracking a whip. Talking about, a big, one of those big giant bull whips. The whip doesn't start in your shoulder though. The whip, the handle of the whip is your foot. Your foot is the handle of the whip. The whip then goes up your leg. Your hips, head and shoulder are the middle of the whip. And your fingertips are the tip of the whip. Now, even if you've never cracked a whip, you're going to get this reference. All you do to crack a bullwhip is you grab the bullwhip by the handle. If I was facing this direction, take the bullwhip by the handle, pull the rest of the whip behind you so the handle of the whip is in front of the rest of the whip. And then all you do is go handle first. That's it. If the handle goes first, the handle of that whip will be followed by this part of the whip, followed by that part of the whip, followed by that part, all the way to the end. All that matters when cracking the whip is that the whip is behind, the handle goes first, and the end of the whip gets there last. If you do that, the whip will automatically crack. Now, if you saw someone out here trying to crack a whip, I don't know why anybody would do this, but if you saw someone trying to crack a bullwhip and you saw them pick up the handle of the whip, and then you saw them also grab the middle of the whip. So they're holding the handle of the whip and the middle of the whip. And then for some reason, they took the handle of the whip and the middle of the whip, and they did them both at the same time. Obviously, that whip doesn't crack. This is the handle of the whip. This is the middle of the whip. And this is the tip of the whip. All timing is, and all snap is one thing, is the handle of the whip getting there first. If this foot hits the ground before any other part of the whip has begun moving forward, then the handle of the whip will be followed by the hips, followed by the shoulders, followed by the elbow, followed by the wrist. It'll happen in the correct order. It'll happen automatically. It literally can't not happen. But what matters is that the handle of the whip has to get there first. It's not easy to do. It's incredibly simple. Now, if any of you decide to watch a video on how to crack a bullwhip, which you don't have to, I've watched them for you, they're like 10 seconds long. Literally, this is how to crack a bullwhip. Pull the whip back there, handle first. Crack. Physics takes over. You don't worry, when does the middle of the whip pass your head? When does this part of the whip do that? No. Whip's back here, handle goes first. That's how to crack a bullwhip. There is not one single video out there on cracking a bullwhip that sounds like this. You pick up the whip by the handle. Not one single how to crack a bullwhip video says you pick up the whip by the handle, you then plant your foot, you shift your weight from your right foot to your left foot before opening the hips. Make sure you come down on the toe because you need to switch to the heel at this point. You're going to then rotate on your heel right before you brace. You drop your shoulder, you lift your elbow, you pull that whip through the power pocket right before you Hulk smash. If you've ever watched videos on timing, that all sounds familiar to you. No. You don't have to worry about what's going on with the middle of the whip or 2/3 of the way up the whip or a quarter of the way up the whip. As long as the handle goes first, the whip cracks. You do not have to worry about your hips or your shoulder or the middle of the whip. All you have to do is plant that foot before any other part of the body has started moving forward, and the whip will crack automatically. Now, the reason why I spend so much time on what basically comes down to plant your foot first is because if you watch someone throwing, and if I watch someone throwing or see a picture, when I see someone doing this, planting their foot and throwing at the same time, it doesn't look wrong. It's not one of those things where you cringe and go, ooh, that can't be right. To me, that doesn't look wrong. It's almost like a baseball swing where the foot and the upper body are going together, right? This doesn't look wrong until you realize that this is the exact same thing as someone trying to crack the whip by doing the handle and the middle of the whip together. So you can visualize how wrong that is. You can't appreciate how wrong that is. Now, I do like to be clear about something at this point. I'm telling you, you don't have to worry about your hips, your shoulder, or any other part of the body in the middle. That kind of contradicts every single sport on planet Earth because the hips are the key to everything, according to every sport out there. I'm not saying the hips aren't important. Don't misquote me and say I'm saying hips don't matter. Of course hips matter. They play a big part in the movement. What I'm saying is the hips will happen automatically. You plant the foot first, the hips will go at the correct time, at the correct speed. You don't consciously put your foot down and then now you're going to decide to rotate your hips because now you decide to move your shoulder, now you decide to bend the elbow. No, plant your foot, the whip cracks. That is the longest I'm going to spend on any one explanation in the next 6 months. But I want you to be able to visualize what's happening to your body. As soon as you can do it, it's a lot easier to make yourself do it. All right, so number 2, plant your foot first. Number 3, keep your weight above your hips. Basically, when you throw, you want to be effectively upright. Now, the reason you want your weight above your hips is because the faster your body rotates, the farther you'll throw. Think about figure skating. A figure skater spinning on their skates slowly, that's because some of their mass, their arms or their legs or both, are away from their body. They rotate slowly. All they do to speed up that rotation, they don't kick their skates, they don't do anything with their feet. Again, this is just physics. They take that mass that's not above their center, that's out here, they pull it above their center, the rotation speeds up. If you lean over when you throw, and the more you lean over when you throw, you're a figure skater with their arms out, slowly rotating your body around you. The more your weight's above your center, the faster you rotate, the farther you'll throw. That's number 3. Number 4, you need to keep your wrist straight. And what I mean by straight is the top of your wrist is parallel to the back of your forearm. So if I was to reach back here like I was going to throw, and then I turned everything to the side just to show you, the top of the wrist is parallel to the back of the arm. If I set a disc on there, it's flat. The wrist is not this way or this way. Now, I prefer straight. If your wrist is cocked a little bit in the cocked direction, and I don't mean it's cocked a lot, but if it's not straight but cocked a little bit, that is not a deal breaker for me. I'm a little bit flexible there. I prefer straight, but a little cocked is okay. However, the other direction, anything that's bending your wrist this direction, you absolutely, it's a rule. You can't do it. And by the way, it doesn't matter if it's bent a little bit back or a lot back. Anything between straight and here, the throw doesn't work. And in fact, if you're throwing your backhand and it's coming out with a lot of wobble, most likely you probably thought it was the grip causing the problem, but then you also probably noticed when you changed your grip, it still wobbled. It wasn't because of grip. It's because your wrist was bent this direction. So get your wrist straight, we'll get rid of the wobble. That's number 4, keep the wrist straight. Number 5 is what you do with your head. And what you do with your head is nothing. What I mean by that is anything you do with your head other than nothing will hurt your throw. There's nothing you can do with your head to help the throw. You can only harm the throw. Basically, your head just goes with your body. It just goes where your shoulders want to take it. So when you're reaching back, your head just goes wherever your shoulders place it. The idea when you reach back is you want to be able to extend back, to reach back, to rotate your shoulders, because you want full extension back to generate power. Now all you got to do is look what happens to my body if my head doesn't go back. So on the first one, it'll go back correctly as I rotate, but on this one, my head will stay forward. Right? Just watching this, you can see what's happening. My entire body is rotating this direction to get into position, and my head is literally going the opposite direction, preventing me from reaching back. This head forward is preventing this much reach back. There's the reach back, there's the head forward. Reach back, forward. Basically, if you keep your head forward, it's like you were playing ball golf, and instead of drawing the club all the way back for a full swing, you only drew the club back, 2/3 of the way. You can still play golf that way. It's not like you can't play, but you're not going to get the power because you're losing that first third of the swing to accelerate the club. Same exact thing. If your head's forward, you're not reaching all the way back. You do not give the disc as much distance to accelerate. You lose a ton of power. Now, I'm pretty sure the reason why a player would keep their head forward is that you're looking where you're throwing. And I always joke that that is the most forgivable technique error there is. It's not dumb to want to look where you're throwing. I mean, it's very intuitive to want to look where you're throwing. In fact, just about every sport where you're not looking at the ball, you're going to look where you're throwing. So it's a forgivable error. You just have to understand that in disc golf, you don't look where you're throwing on a power backhand. When you reach back, the moment you take your eyes off the target, you will never find that target again before the throw. When you throw a backhand for power, the last 2 steps of the backhand are completely blind. Now, the reason you can throw completely blind and still aim the disc is because of the lines. That's why those lines are so important. As soon as you can replicate your mechanics the same every time, which you can do for sure, first because you're simplifying your mechanics and getting rid of everything you don't need, which makes it simple, but also everybody can learn to replicate what their body does. I mean, it's no different than a tennis serve, a golf swing, doing like an aerobics class, doing karate forms, formal dance. I mean, there's plenty of things where we make our body do the same things every single time. We can all do this. As soon as you can replicate your mechanics the same every time, with the understanding that you don't release the disc, it's going to happen automatically. Well, that means that the moment you square up to throw, it is basically at this point predetermined where the disc is going to go. Right? I mean, if you do the exact same mechanics every single time and you're not releasing the disc, this determines where the disc is going to go, not your eyes. And by the way, if you had a 5-step run-up, it would be the 3rd step of the 5-step run-up. 1, 2, turn. Predetermine where the disc is going to throw. So, you take your eyes off the target, trust that when you're drawing the lines and you develop your timing and replicate your mechanics, the disc is going to fly on the line that you're aiming. So you do nothing with your head. Don't use your eyes to throw. That's number 5. And number 6 is where you pull the disc. And where you're going to pull the disc across your body is where you have the most strength. Now, this is going to be one of those areas, well, most of the areas are like this, where we're not all going to be identical. Our bodies are different. But what is the same for every player is I want you to pull the disc where you have the most strength. So, a great way to visualize it is this. You have 2 lawnmowers. They've both been in the garage for 20 years. They're just completely gunked up. You're going to really have to pull this cord to get them to start. And for this example, you're going to pull the cord parallel to the ground because we are trying to emulate a throw. You're not pulling up, it's parallel to the ground. But you have 2 lawnmowers. The first lawnmower is sitting on the back of a truck or something, but it's sitting right about chest level. Every person here can easily reach back around chest level, grab that cord, and you can start a lawnmower. There's not a lawnmower in the world you can start up here. You're so strong up here. That's easy. Now, the lawnmower sitting next to it is just a little bit lower. It's right about belt level. Keeping the weight above the hips, which you have to do, and pulling parallel to the ground to emulate a throw, try to start a lawnmower across your belt line. And all you got to do is just try it to feel how much, like, you can just tell you're weak down here. I've never measured it, but I'd be willing to bet that you're 30% weaker between here and here. So really, this is the lawnmower is just an exercise to get it into your head what a massive difference it makes where you pull the disc across your body. A little bit different height, massive loss of power. Okay, now you need to figure out where you are the strongest. That's easy. You know you're weaker across the belt line. Well, then try 2 inches above the belt line. You're going to feel stronger. 2 inches higher. You're going to feel stronger. A little bit higher, stronger. A little bit higher, stronger. A little bit higher, less strong. A little bit higher, even less strong. Okay, we'll take it back down to where you were the strongest. Wherever you have the most strength is where you are going to pull the disc. It's not going to be identical for everybody, but what is identical for everybody is that everybody's going to pull where they have the most strength. That's it. Those are the only 6 things you're going to do. You are going to square up on a line, put the weight above the hips. You're going to keep the wrist straight. The head goes with the body. You plant first. You pull the disc across your body where you have the most strength. Those are the only 6 things you do on a throw. Now, everything you just did there, remember, is geared towards making this object leave your hand as fast as possible. Right? Weight above the hips means you rotate faster. Planting first means you're cracking the whip. You're pulling where you're strongest, not where you're weaker. I mean, it's all gauged towards power. When you do that, the disc is going to fly flat. It's a complete coincidence that the maximum power or maximum speed throw also happens to be the angle the disc is going to best fly at. Like if the entire game wasn't disc golf, it was just how fast can I make this go, you would throw it flat. But again, it's a coincidence that that's also how you kind of want to throw a golf shot. Obviously, you don't always throw flat, and obviously you don't always throw with full power. I'm going to touch on these briefly, how to adjust angle and power. Changing angle and power is actually just about the easiest thing you're going to do in the next 6 months. That is a piece of cake. You're going to do it in your sleep. But since this is a complete disc golfer class, we're going to cover everything. So I'll touch on it just briefly, just to make sure we cover everything. So first off, angle. The way you're going to adjust the angle is at your hips. All you're going to do, if you want to throw a 10-degree hyzer, is lean over 10 degrees. From this point forward, everything stays exactly the same. You're still pulling across your body in the exact same position relative to your arm and your body. Your head goes with the shoulders. Your wrist is going to be straight. You still plan first. Nothing changes. You just leaned over 10 degrees. Want to throw a 20-degree hyzer? lean over 20 degrees. 5-degree anhyzer, lean back 5 degrees. Now, you can only lean so far back, so far forward. I mean, at some point, you can only lean back to a point. If you want to put more anhyzer angle at some point, yeah, you're going to have to pull the disc up here, or your spike hyzer might be down here. But those are situational shots. The vast majority, like 95% of your drives, especially, are going to take place between here and there. Basically, all you've done is tilted the entire universe from your waist up to the side, and then nothing else has changed. Now, it may appear that I just contradicted myself because I just said to lean forward or lean back after a few minutes ago saying keep your weight above your hips. Remember, your baseline throw is your maximum power shot. If you want, and the disc comes out flat. If you want to throw the disc with an angle, you have to trade off something. There's basically 3 ways you could control the angle of a disc. The first would be with your wrist, right? You can obviously tilt your wrist up or tilt your wrist down to adjust the angle. Do not do this. This is a terrible idea for changing the angle of a disc. Here's what you do with your wrist. Oops. Here's what you do with your disc. Basically, or with your wrist. You put your wrist in its natural resting position, where it just wants to sit naturally. Mine sits right here. Yours might sit right there. You don't have to force it straight. If your natural position's here, then put it there. But wherever your wrist naturally sits and most easily moves is where your wrist is going to be. Now, I can tilt my wrist up here and still go back and forth. I can tilt it down and go back and forth. But in both those cases, and by the way, when I say up and down, I mean I can go up here or down. In both those cases, when I go back and forth, I can literally feel it impinging and grinding in my wrist. There's no way that's good for you. You don't adjust the angle with your wrist. Your wrist is going to be in its natural position. Now, I said to keep your wrist straight, which you're going to do. You're going to keep your wrist straight is what you're going to try to do. However, during the throw, that wrist will bend and your follow through it will bend. You're not purposely bending it. You're trying to keep it straight, but it will bend. But it needs to be on that line right there. One of the coolest things that's going to happen in the next 6 months, and it took me a lifetime again to figure this out, but every single correct way to throw is also exactly how your body most naturally wants to move. And it's so cool that it worked out that way, because if the best way to not get injured or not get sore, not hurt yourself, was one throwing technique, but the way to throw the farthest or most accurately was another technique, I would be torn. Do I teach the safest, healthiest way to play disc golf or the most effective way to score better? But it turns out that, with that exception, every single thing I'm going to teach you on how to throw the best score also correlates with what is easiest on your body. So that's just luck, but that's the way it worked out, but that is the way it is. So your wrist is just like every other part of your body in the next 6 months is going to be in its natural moving position. So you don't adjust the angle there. The second way you could adjust the angle technically would be to lift the disc up here or to pull it down here. But remember, massive loss of power up here and down here. So the least of the 3 trade-offs is the waist, right? If you lean over, technically you'll rotate a tiny bit slower, but of the 3 options, that's the smallest trade-off. The way I like to think of this with angle, imagine if I was a robot and I was programmed to throw exactly the same every time. And then you wanted to put this disc at an angle. Same exact throw, but you would just turn a knob and I'd go click, 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 stop, want that angle. Then you get the start button and the throw looks identical. It's just one thing has changed. Again, this is also the simplest way. Everything's going to be as simple as possible. You wouldn't change 3 things to change the angle of a disc. You just change one simple thing. Is the least number of variables. So that's how you change the angle, just at the waist. And the way you change the speed of a disc is you reduce the backswing. Now, what you are not going to do to reduce the speed of the disc is you're not just going to throw slower. That does not work. When you want to throw a finesse shot, you reach back to here. When you want to throw a little bit farther, you reach back to here. When you want to throw a power shot, you reach back to there. Think of ball golf. If a ball golfer is trying to do a chip shot from right off the green, they're going to switch to a wedge. We're going to switch to a putter or an approach disc. Right? We're all going to change our equipment. But what you're not going to see that golfer do once they take their wedge right off the green is take the wedge with a full range driving motion and then just try to make the club go slowly. Doesn't work. No, they're going to draw the club back just a little bit. But from here, they're still going to give it some oomph on the swing. But the ball doesn't go very far because the club has such a short distance to accelerate. So we're doing the same thing. You're just going to reach back a little bit less, but from here, you're still going to give it some oomph. The disc is still going to snap off your hand. It's just, it has so little distance to accelerate, it doesn't go fast. Okay, so that's how you adjust the angle and adjust the speed. But again, the fundamental mechanics, everything takes place on a line, weight above the hips, wrist stays straight, head goes with the body, plant first, pull where you're strongest. Now, I'm emphatic that you only do 6 things when you throw. I think at this point, it's completely reasonable if most or all of you aren't at least a little bit skeptical, because there's all these things that you've thought about when you throw that I didn't talk about, and there's tons of videos on all these other things out there. And here I am saying, forget about every single one of them, just do these 6 things, trust me. What I found is worth doing at my clinics and seminars, even in a 2-hour clinic, I still take the time to do this because I think it's worth it, is I like to talk about something that you can ignore. I won't talk about all 44 things that happen automatically, but I find it valuable to just talk about one. I want to talk about something that you almost certainly think is important, and most of you are probably even thinking, wait, we didn't talk about this yet. And I want to take a few minutes and I want to convince you of why you don't need to worry about it. And the idea is once you can buy into, oh, hey, 5 minutes ago, I thought that thing was important. And now I realize I don't need to think about it. Once you realize that, it's easier to let go of all the other things. So I think this is worth doing. Again, I won't talk about all 44 things you don't do, but we're going to talk about one. I did not talk about my feet at all. Seems like a pretty important thing to leave out, right? I mean, what angle are your feet at? How do you brace? Do you come down on your toe or your heel? Where is your foot position? Do you rotate on your toe or do you rotate on your heel? I didn't talk about anything with my feet. If you ask me any question about your feet, my only answer is going to be, do your knees hurt when you throw? And if you tell me that your knees aren't hurting when you throw, then your feet are right. Your feet are in the only correct place they could possibly be. Now, I like to be very clear about this because what I am not saying is all that matters is that you don't get hurt, right? You didn't sign up, take this class just to figure out how to not hurt your knees when you throw. You signed up to score better on the disc golf course, first and foremost. What I'm saying is, if your knees don't hurt, it means that your feet are in the only correct position they could possibly be to have the best possible score. I'll explain. All I want you to do is watch my feet. I'm going to do a 3-step run up as if I'm throwing this direction. The first time is going to be 3 steps of a finesse throw. The second time is 3 steps of a power throw. Just watch my feet. Step 1, step 2, step 3. That's the finesse throw. Now watch my feet on the power throw. Throw in that direction. 1, 2, 3. Probably something more like that. Totally different, right? When I did the finesse throw, I was flat-footed. My feet were pointed at the camera. When I did the power throw, I was 90 degrees up on my toes. I did not do anything different with my feet between those two different throws. On the first throw, a finesse throw, I reached back to here. Well, when I reach back to here, my shoulders are here. When my shoulders are here, my hips are here. When my hips are here, my feet went exactly where my subconscious automatically put them based on where my hips were. When I did the power throw, I reached all the way back. Now, right about here, I could actually feel it starting to hurt my knee right here. But that'll never happen on a throw because when I reach back, my shoulders rotate. When my shoulders rotate, my hips rotate. And when my hips rotate, my feet automatically turn. That foot rotation and foot placement happened automatically. The best example of this is basketball. Basketball should be physically impossible. Well, first off, everybody, well, if you're older, for sure you know this. If you're younger, trust me on this. But our knees suck, right? I mean, if you're older, you know this. This is one of the most sad, pathetic joints in the entire body. It's something like 5 pounds of lateral pressure could literally blow your knee out. Like, we should not have survived as a species because of how pathetic these knees are. Because 100,000 years ago, if you blew out one of your knees, you could no longer hunt and you died and you didn't pass along anything to the next generation. The reason that didn't happen to us, or at least rarely happened to us, is that this part of our brain back here that thinks way faster than the conscious part, every single step we take calculates our angle, our momentum, our rotation, our decision making, and it puts our foot down in the exact right spot every single time for the sole purpose of making sure those knees don't explode. So I said basketball should be physically impossible. It should be. I'm 200 pounds. The amount of times in a game of basketball I would put my foot down and the amount of force I would put on my knees, my knee should blow out in like 15 seconds. But it doesn't, because every single step on the basketball court, that part of my brain that thinks way faster than I do, it calculates my momentum, my angles, my rotation. It even factors in my conscious decision making and my plans every single step and puts my foot down in the only possible spot it could be to protect my knees. We couldn't play basketball if we actually had to think about our foot placement on the basketball court. But fortunately, we don't. Nobody does. It happens automatically. So what happens is, well-intentioned YouTubers are watching videos of Paul in slow motion. And by the way, it's always Paul. And that's not dumb, that's smart. I watch videos of Paul Macbeth and study what Paul does. Of course, he's the best. Of course I watch what Paul does and learn from it. But here's where they get it wrong on all these foot placement videos. They're watching videos of Paul and they say, okay, here's when Paul puts his toe down. And when Paul gets to here, this is when Paul gets onto his heel. And when Paul's at this angle, this is when Paul rotates on his heel. Paul didn't do any of those things. Paul threw a golf disc. Paul did not think about his feet when he threw any more than Michael Jordan thought about his feet when he was playing basketball. You don't think about your feet. Foot placement happens automatically. There are evolutionary reasons that make our brain put our feet in the correct spot every time. Don't think about your feet. If your knees aren't hurting, your feet are right. And I'm going to beat a dead horse for 20 more seconds. When I was doing those 1,200 private lessons, at the time, I used to always talk to the person on the phone first. I would ask them what they want to work on, how long they've been playing. This is what I used to do back then. And out of 1,200 people, around 40 of them said they want to do a private lesson because their knees hurt when they throw. Sometimes it was hips, but usually it was knees. I do not believe, if I recall correctly, there was a single exception to this. Every single player whose knees hurt when they threw was doing something with their feet. They were saying, I don't know why my knees are hurting. I'm getting onto my heel. I'm pushing back onto my heel right here like I'm supposed to. No. All I had them do, I'm not trying to be a doctor. I'm not trying to pretend I'm smarter than I am. All I said to them was, stop thinking about your feet. It'll happen automatically. The moment they stop thinking about their feet, oh my God, my knees don't hurt anymore. Right, your knees don't hurt. That part of your brain is way better than this part of your brain at putting your feet down. So, foot placement happens automatically. You never have to think about your feet again. Now, if your knees are hurting, then we have to address something. Maybe something is wrong. But if your knees aren't hurting, your feet are right, they're in the correct place to throw correctly. Just like if your knees don't hurt when you play basketball, your feet are exactly where they're supposed to be to play basketball. So forget about your feet. And again, I just spent like 7 minutes on something that we're not working on. But hopefully, if you can buy into the idea that I don't need to worry about feet, it happens automatically, well, then trust that every other thing that we didn't talk about that isn't one of those six things will also happen automatically. It'll work. All right. Now, I said you got to do 6 things. Even when you do those 6 things, there's still 3 things you can do wrong. We're going to touch on those briefly. And by the way, I know for some of you it's going to be getting late. If that's the case, make sure if you have to leave, you tune back in later. Either you stick around and tune back in later, because right now we're still talking theory. This is all stuff that's on the YouTube videos. When I'm done with this, it'll be much shorter, but then we're going to get into the exact method that you have to do to throw correctly. That's what you paid for. This you could probably dig out of YouTube if you looked for, but I still have to cover it. But the method that's coming in just a few minutes, that is the gold that is going to make you throw right. So make sure you don't miss that. All right. So 3 things that you could do wrong. First, from your elbow to your wrist, at no point does this part of your arm swivel. It does not swivel this direction. Instead, you have 2 hinges, your elbow and your wrist. Both those hinges must move parallel to the ground. Now remember, we're talking about a baseline throw. You're throwing uphill, downhill, things change, but your base throw parallel to the ground. So your elbow, your upper arm's here, your forearm's here. This hinge, your arms must be in a position so this hinge, when it moves, will be parallel to the ground. Your arm doesn't move this way when you throw, but it needs to be at this angle. Your wrist, you're going to try to keep it straight, right? That's correct. That's one of the 6 rules. However, you need to hold your hand in a position so that if your wrist were to move, this hinge also moves parallel to the ground. If this hinge is in a position to move parallel, your wrist is parallel to the ground, and then on your follow through, your wrist stays in this position, your pinky remains pointed down. You cannot put that nose up on the disc even if you tried. The nose angle will be correct automatically. This is one of those examples. This is a fantastic example of what I'm teaching about. When you do something, everything else gets taken care of. If you post to any Facebook group and just say, hey, I'm having a problem with the nose going up on my backhand, you're going to get, depending on how you look at it, either 5 or 6 different answers as to why that's happening. Every one of those answers is correct. There are either 5 or 6 different reasons that the nose would go up on the disc. However, all 5 or 6 of them are corrected by making these hinges go parallel to the ground. So this is the example. Don't swivel, that's a rule, and all 5 or 6 of those vanish. You don't have to worry about all 5 or 6. Do the one, automatically takes care of. Now, the best way to visualize the non-swivel, and I apologize, I've never figured out a politically correct way to describe this that's better than this, so we're going with it, is if you're backhanding someone upside the side of their head, right? Pinky's down, and you whack them upside the head. Whack. That's the correct position for your arm and hand. What you're not going to do to somebody is you're not going to karate chop them with your pinky. So you're not going to go palm down, whack. Okay? That's it. Cross the body this way, not this way. If you do that, the nose won't go up. That's one thing you must not do, is this never swivels this way because it's going this way. That's number one. Number two, you want to keep, and this won't be perfect, but you want to try to keep levels as best as possible. The disc and your body, as best as possible, are going to go parallel to the ground. That means the disc is going to be across parallel to the ground. You're not going to swoop down. Your backswing's not going to be up here. Best as possible level, but also your body is going to stay level to the ground. You're not going to bounce up and down. Or there are some players that are perfectly level to the ground, and then on the last step, they drive into the ground and they drop down. Well, that's changing levels. You don't want to change levels. Everything is parallel to the ground. Basically, that also means you're not going to be in an athletic stance, right? You're just going to be upright, parallel to the ground. If you want to see the best in the world at this, watch Paul McBeth. His levels, the way his levels are to the ground, I mean, I'm in awe whenever I watch, because those levels are so perfect. Oh, yeah. Paul's the best example. I'm not even the best example of this by far. That's Paul. But everything levels to the ground is number two. And number three is the length of your strides. The length of your strides are going to be your natural gait when walking backwards. So if you're doing a finesse shot, which means you're walking up the tee pad, not running up the tee pad because it's a short shot. If you were walking back and just walking backwards, your natural strides, that's how long your strides are going to be on the throw. Your X step is going to be a natural stride back, and your plant's going to be a natural stride. That's it. If you were doing a run-up, it's natural. On the run-up, when you're running backwards, you're naturally going to take longer strides. Well, then you'll have longer strides on the tee pad. But you're still only doing the length of the stride that is natural to you. So basically what it means is you don't do anything with your steps. You just are natural. So when you throw, you're not going to do an X step back here, or you're not going to do your little mini X step here and then plant right here. No, everything is just in its natural strides. One of the most annoying things about disc golf, the Disc Golf Pro Tour, I think to a lot of people, is you watch these players who throw so far, and it looks like they're not even trying. And it's so darn annoying. Like, here you are putting all this effort into it, and they're not even trying, and they're throwing 500 feet, 600 feet, or farther. Of course they're trying. They're putting a ton of effort into it. They got great technique. Their timing's awesome. Everything about what they're doing involves effort. The reason it looks effortless is because they're following every single one of these rules. It looks effortless because they're not taking a long final step. They're not really reaching back on their X step. They're not leaning back on their backswing because then their weight's not above their hips. They're not lunging. They're not extending. They're not pulling. So therefore, it looks like they're not trying because everything is so upright and casual and modest. But they're not doing that because that's the way to throw with control. They're doing all those things because that's the way to throw with control and with power. You don't get power by lunging, leaning, extending. It's about timing, how fast you can rotate, and following those rules. Got one more thing, then I'm going to take questions. I know I've been talking for a while, and then we're going to get to the actual method. By the way, the method part is a lot quicker than this. This is, again, the longest I'm going to spend on any one topic is this whole backhand thing. Um, from here on out, it gets a little easier, but there's a lot to cover. What I've learned is that it's so much easier to do things when you have all the information. So I'm going to give you all the information, but in a minute, then I'm going to give you the actual step by step. That's where we're going to be doing this. But you need the information to apply it to the steps. Okay, final thing, grip. When it comes to grip, just figure out what works for you and do that. Remember that thing earlier I said was terrible advice? It is terrible advice for everything except for grip. It 100% applies to grip. More than any other part of the game, grip is completely individual based on body type. With your grip, there will never be a universally correct grip in disc golf, ever. Now, you're trying to accomplish 3 things with your grip. First, you want a strong grip. Second, you want a clean release. And third, you want a consistent release. Those are rules. You have to accomplish those 3 things. It's just that there's not one grip that will accomplish all 3 of them. Now, the reason you want a strong grip is because the disc needs to stay in your hand until the last possible moment before involuntarily leaving your hand. You want a clean release, meaning you want it to come out with as little wobble as possible. And you want a consistent release, meaning you want the disc to come out the same every time. There's no such thing as one grip that'll give you all 3 of those things. So we're going to give you a starting point, but I'm endlessly flexible in this. So first off, as far as having a strong grip, all things being equal in a perfect world, 4 fingers are stronger than 3 fingers. And by the way, if the index finger's on the rim, that's also a 3-finger grip. This finger's doing nothing to hold the disc. You want 4 fingers underneath. Having said that, I don't care if you do a fan grip with all 4 fingers wide, pads on touching the bottom of the disc. You could pull the fingers in for a pinch grip, which is the pads of the fingers are touching the bottom of the disc. Or you could curl the fingers underneath for a power grip with the fingernails touching the disc. I don't care which of those you do. Throughout the next couple months, I'm going to talk about several things in disc golf that are the worst named things in the sport. And by worst named, I just mean the names of these things have screwed everybody up. Not everybody, but a lot of players up. This is the first one, and this is a biggie. Most of y'all have heard the term power grip before. If you're new to disc golf, or maybe if you've been playing for a while, but especially if you're new, it's kind of implied that if you want to throw far, you got to grip with a power grip, right? I mean, it's called the power grip. You know why it's called a power grip? Because the person that named it had to call it something. It could have been called the banana grip. It could have been called the John Smith grip. It could have been called anything. It was called a power grip. It does not mean that a power grip flies farther, for example, than a pinch grip. Every world record I ever set, world distance record I ever set, was with a pinch grip. I got to double check this, but either Simon Lizotte or Garrett Gerthier, or maybe both of them, don't throw with a power grip either. They throw with pinch grips. Now, that does not mean pinch grip is better than a power grip. Not at all. Plenty of world records were shot with power grips also. What it means is everyone's hand is different. Whichever one of those grips works best for you, you go with that grip and you are correct. There's no universally correct grip. Having said that, I said in a perfect world, 4 fingers is better than 3. However, if you try all 3 different 4-finger grips and you can't get a good release, but the minute you pop that pinky off and you throw with 3 fingers, you get a better throw with 3 fingers. I think I'm the only person in the world that will give you permission to throw a 3-finger grip, but absolutely, there are players that the minute they pop that pinky on the disc, it screws up the rest of their grip. Their hands aren't shaped right for 4 fingers. Try to do 4 fingers. But if 4 fingers don't work for you, there's zero problem with throwing from 3 fingers, and that is not going to stop you from throwing far or getting good. So better to have a good 3-finger grip than an awkward 4-finger grip. As far as where the disc rests in your hand, You want to have a consistent release, which means the disc needs to be up against your palm. Okay, that part's in stone. The disc has to be here. It can't be floating around out here. You won't get a consistent release. It's got to be against the palm. However, where against your palm, completely up to you. Our hands are different. I can't tell you where against your palm to put it, but it does have to be against the palm. And as far as your thumb, best place to start is to squeeze the middle of the disc and then slide the thumb up until you feel the lip of the disc. That is a great place to start on thumb grip. However, if that doesn't feel right, but the minute you put your thumb up like here it does, then throw with your thumb up here. If it doesn't feel good there, but when you slide it towards the edge it feels better, throw from there. Here's the thing about grip. Grip is never the problem. With every player I've ever worked with, and a high percentage of them have wondered, am I throwing with the right grip? Let me show you my grip. As soon as they're doing those 6 things right and we eliminate those 3 things you shouldn't do, their throw's fine. It's never the grip. Like literally like twice ever has it been the grip. Now it's not that which grip you choose isn't important. What I'm saying is that you've tried different grips. One of them works best for you. There's a 99.something% chance that that grip that you have, that you're using right now, is the correct grip. So we cover grip barely because almost certainly your grip is fine. So do not overthink grip. All right, we're going to get to questions, but again, after questions, we're going to go to the step-by-step method. That is what you paid for. Do not miss that part of this. That's everything. All right, questions. You said feet do nothing, stay neutral. But you said feet do 3 things: up the line, down the line, up the line. So are you lining up your foot next? Okay, so that's a great question. What I mean is you're trying to put everything on a line, but where your feet actually go on that line is where your body is going to put them, because based on your shape, your hips, how your body moves. So I'll just give you an example of this. I said your feet go up a line, throwing that direction on, and I say you got to be on a line. Technically, if you moved your feet on the line, your feet would do this. Step 1 up the line, and then your X step would look like this. Because you stayed on the line, right? They would collide. However, if I did not show you that, not one single person would actually do that. Everybody, without being told, would take their other foot and swing it around that foot. So what I'm telling you to do is think line. Put it on the line, but allow your body to move along the line as it moves. Again, your body is going to put your feet different than mine. Your body is going to put your feet at different angles than mine. Everybody's going to be a little bit different. So yeah, everything takes place along the line. That's as far as I want you to think it. Do you leave the disc in place and move your body away from it, or do you push the disc out? Okay, that's a good question, because there is, and by the way, if I get this wrong, forgive me, but there is 2 ways to look at what's happening. One is to push the disc backwards as I X step. However, it also visually appears that the disc is staying in place and you're just stepping around the disc. You're basically doing the same thing visually. It's almost like confirmation bias. If you look at that as a backswing, you'll see me push the disc backwards, but if you watch the exact same video again and say, he's just stepping around the disc, it appears the disc is staying still and I'm stepping around it. So both of those are actually accurate ways of describing what happens or what you're observing. So I don't think either of those is technically wrong as to say this is what the person did. I say push the disc back though, because when you're trying to visualize the throw, when you think about it as pushing backwards, you're drawing a line. If you're stepping around the disc, you're going to have to step around the disc and find the line. So it might just be a little bit of mental gymnastics, but I think visualizing it for you as pushing the disc back is a way to draw a better line that you're going to be more accurate with. Even though if someone said you're just stepping around the disc, you can't really contradict them. Technically, they're right, but not as a teaching method. And if I didn't get your question right, feel free to follow up with a question. But I say push the disc back because it's a way of visualizing the line. I'm playing a lot of hills. How do I get further up the hill and not throw into the hill? All right, so we're going to touch more details on this later because right now it's just the fundamental mechanics of the throw. And once you have those, then we start making changes to the throw. And we're going to start getting into more details on strategies and situations. However, I will always at least briefly address a question so you don't think I'm just being dismissive. When you're throwing up a hill, you're still just drawing lines. So if I want to throw up a hill, what I'm going to do is this right here, my forearm is going to turn up at an angle. Then I'm going to push up, and I'm going to push down, and then I'm going to push up again. So I'm basically doing the same thing. I'm changing the starting position, but then I'm still leaving myself 3 actions of the disc, 3 actions of the feet. I don't want to start flat and add a 7th variable, which is at some point on the throw, turn. I would want to start at the beginning and then remove the variable. It's almost like leaning over the hips. You remove the variable so it's not part of the throw. So basically, your forearm from here to here, if you're throwing over something, is this. If you're throwing down a hill, is this. By the way, you can also lean a little bit forward or a little bit back as well. But you can't really lean much. Your body won't go that far. So I don't really teach to lean. But if you were tilting your arm, you will lean a little bit. But I don't need to teach you to lean. It'll happen automatically. And we'll get into more specifics of situations as we move on. Should there be things to look for about grip to avoid nose angle? Nope. Nose angle has nothing to do with grip. Nose angle is going to be this hinge and this hinge. It does not matter how I grip this disc. If this hinge and this hinge move this direction, no matter how I grip the disc, look, I'm going to watch. Power grip, fan grip, bone and pain grip, thumb up, thumb back. No matter what I do, when these hinges go this direction, that disc remains flat. It's not grip. Grip is not the cause of nose angle. Now, I suppose, by the way, technically, if you move your thumb forward versus back, you maybe could. No one's ever studied this, but I'd be willing to bet you can change it by like 1/4 of a degree or some whatever insignificant amount. So I'm not saying grip has 0 effect on it, but it's a nominal effect. To use the X step for approach shots or as well as stationary stance. So no. So if you're doing a standstill, you won't. If you're doing a standstill, you're just going to be standing there. So there's going to be no X step. You're going to reach back and you're going to throw. I will do an X step for, you will do an X step for any time you're throwing. If you're doing a 3-step run up, I don't care how short it is, you're still going to do the X step. However, you're reaching back so little, you're going so slow, your strides are so short, it might look like this. Everything's reduced, but you're still doing an X step. You're just reducing the backswing. Different grip on putters or no? Okay, yes. So this is one of those areas. It's kind of one of those funny areas, but it's like the example I gave earlier. When we get to putting, we'll talk about grip a little bit, but usually with putting, it's going to be a fan grip. The hand is going to be opened up, fingers either on the rim or underneath. The thing is, if I never told anybody that to not use the power grip on the putt, 0 people would actually putt with the power grip. So all you got to do is try this twice to realize it's impossible to control. So basically everybody putts with some version of the fan grip, and they're correct. But the grip that you use is going to be correct. It's one of those things where it's like there's no trick on the grip where if you change this grip or you change that thing, that's what's going to change the throw. There's so many things that affect the throw. Like if I made a list of all the things to throw, it's not that grip doesn't matter. It's just that there's this thing, this thing, this thing, this thing. When you go way down here is grip. Your grip is right. So this is what I will say with grip. I said like 99. I mean, every time I say always or never, like those are never accurate statements. Like if that's always a flaw on my part, because anytime you say always or never, what I should say is 99 point something percent of the time. There's always exceptions. So what I'm going to tell everybody here about grip is stick with whatever grip you have. Follow the rules, right? Against the palm and try to grip with 4 fingers, but 3's okay. But stick with whatever grip you have. Just focus on everything else we're doing. If you're doing all 6 things correctly, and by the way, you're posting the form reviews, so we can tell if you're doing those 6 things correctly and you're not doing those 3 things and the throw still isn't working. At that point, let's take a look at your grip, because I don't know what else it could be. Everything else was correct. But here's the thing. I can just about promise you that when you're doing those 6 things correctly and not doing those 3, that it turned out your grip was fine all along. Not 100%, but very close. Regarding keeping your wrist straight, how do you keep your wrist straight while snapping the disc at the end of your throw? So you try to keep your wrist straight, but when you accelerate, your wrist won't stay straight. This is like a spring. All right, so your wrist is straight. As you accelerate, you're trying to keep it straight, but during the acceleration, the wrist will bend. And at that point of release, when your arm changes direction, that wrist, the disc will come out and the wrist will bend the other direction. You can't keep your wrist straight even if you tried. So you put your wrist straight and it will snap automatically. It's one of those things where I'm just going to tell you that it'll work. Just keep your wrist straight, and the disc will snap out of your hand. It's not like you have this like one of those bowling wrist guards on your hand that actually literally keep your hand locked in place. If you did that, the disc would come out wobbly and not fly. That happens to 0 people. So just try to keep your wrist straight and just trust that it's going to happen automatically. Okay, so double G and some others curling the wrist. Okay, so this is what I meant when I said keep the wrist straight. But if you curl it a little bit, it's not a deal breaker for me. This is one of those rare areas where I said I prefer straight, but if it's cocked a little bit, I'm flexible in that area. So yeah, there are going to be some players that do that. Ricky also does that. But that doesn't make it right. It just means that there's flexibility in that area for the wrist to be cocked. I don't like the variable of the cocked wrist, to be honest, though, because if I said put my wrist straight, I could put it straight 100% of the time. But if I tried to cock my wrist at 10 degrees, maybe that's 10 degrees. Maybe that's 12. Maybe that's 9. Maybe next time it's 11. And then I try again, it's 9. I think that's less predictable than straight. It's very easy to see straight. I mean, all you got to do is look at a line. If that line's straight, you can spot it and identify it as a straight line every single time. If that line's bent, you cannot automatically every single time say that line bends at 11 degrees. Like you're guessing. It's between 5 and 15 degrees. So angles are harder to replicate than straight. So I prefer straight. But again, if it bends a little bit, as long as it's this way, not this way, I'm flexible in that area. My natural throw has been just below my nipples with a mostly straight back. Should the disc be parallel or hold 10 degrees angle of the upper arm? Yeah, so basically you're going to, this is why, by the way, the question specific to the nipples is where that was the origin of when I started saying pull the disc where you have the most strength. Because I was watching, we're going to talk about nipples for a minute, everybody. Hope that's okay. I was watching a video where someone says, yeah, pull the disc across your nipples. And my first thought was, how does that make sense unless all of our nipples are in the exact same spot? Which I don't know. I haven't looked at everybody in the group. I assume we're different. So therefore, that's why you can't say it has to be in front of the nipples. I would say right now that if you're pulling Where you have the most strength, with a mostly straight back, the disc should be parallel, should be 10 degrees. So it's basically going to be straight at that point. Just pull where it's straight, and then we'll see where the disc angle is when you pull across your body. Everybody's different. So if you follow these rules, you might not have a 0-degree throw. If you follow all these rules exactly, your body type might put that disc at, let's say, 3 degrees of hyzer or anhyzer, following all those rules. That's fine, because your natural baseline throw is that 3-degree anhyzer, for example. But then you understand that the way you would throw it flat is to lean forward 3 degrees, not to change something else. So it's more of just a priority order of things. Do those 6 things, here's the result, and then to modify from that result, whether it's straight or an angle, is going to be at the waist. What about the pouring the cup of coffee to keep the nose down? Yeah, I don't like that at all. That is not what puts the nose down on a disc. That is, here, watch. You can do this, but everybody else can do this as well. If you've seen the pour the coffee videos, hold your wrist up and move your wrist back and forth. Okay, that shouldn't hurt or anything, right? Now, tilt your wrist down and go back and forth. If you do that, you're going to feel it impinging right here. There's no way that's right. And I've never tested this, but I can tell just by feeling that you will not be as strong down here as you are up here. So I don't like pouring the coffee at all, not even a little bit. You fix the nose down by doing this, not by that pouring the coffee. By the way, the person making the pouring the coffee videos, I think they've got good videos. So I am not in any way knocking them or their content. I mean, they got good stuff out there. I just happen to disagree with this one. I don't, at no point should your body be in a position that is in a position where it doesn't move naturally. By the way, let me back up. If the only way to adjust the angle of a disc was to move your wrist up and down, and that was the only option, my response to you and to everybody would be, hey, guess what? When you change the angle of the disc, you're going to hurt your wrist. Suck it up. It's sports. Sometimes sports hurt. You want to get good at something? Deal with it. I would have no problem at all saying, look, you throw better by doing it this way, and if it hurts a little bit, that's the trade-off to be good at this. It just happens that we are so lucky in disc golf that all the movements of throwing correctly are exactly the way the body wants to move naturally, which means you can play forever and not get hurt. You should be able to play forever. So, and by the way, I wouldn't actually recommend doing something to hurt you, but I would have to consider that as an option. And I would certainly tell everybody, hey, look, changing angle is going to hurt. That's disc golf, but it's not. So anything that puts our body, any part of our body, in an awkward position, I'm never going to tell you to do. And by the way, even if something doesn't hurt now, who's to say it's not going to hurt in 10 years of doing something? 15 years, 20 years? No, you should be able to play this sport the rest of your life, and you can't do that if something's impinging the first time you try it. Do you feel the follow through on the backhand should also be naturally letting your body continue the line? Yes, 100% exactly. So I don't teach follow through because you don't do follow through. You plant your foot, you start that lawnmower and pull the disc. Follow through is a result of the throw, which means it should continue on the line, and especially the pinky needs to be in the same position it was on the hand, which is continuing down. You're not karate chopping. All right, are we getting close? Okay. By the way, we're going to go a little bit over 2 hours. I'm not really apologizing because it's more important that we get to all the questions. Just letting you know, again, this is the longest class, but do not tune out and make sure we're about to get to the method part. That's the most important part. Nobody bail before that, or make sure you come back.
This is the last one.
This is the last one.
The rest of the questions will be answered with the next section.
Okay. So the manager is watching. She's going through the questions. So a lot of your questions I'm not going to answer because if she identifies them as something that gets answered in the method section, then we left it out. But I will take questions afterwards in case there's something still pending. I noticed that most of the touring pros are tall fellas, but not all. Macbeth, Gerthy, LaCastro. You think that having longer limbs gives a natural advantage to throwing a disc? 100% for sure. It's physics. If you're taller, all things being equal, you throw farther. I would be a liar if I said that wasn't true. If a baseball pitcher has identical skill and strength and ability, one's 6'9" and one's 5'4", the 6'9" player throws harder. It's physics. However, you just listed 3 of the top players in the world. All 3 of them crush, and they throw far enough, and none of them are tall. You don't have to be tall to throw far. You do not have to be tall to throw far enough. So even at the highest level, and I'm talking the Disc Golf Pro Tour, on the Pro Tour, you still only need a controlled 450-foot hyzer and the ability to get 520 or 530 if you throw like a flex shot. That range is within range for any player that's, of touring pro age, who's being athletic, who's trying to become a professional disc golfer. Let's say this: no kid who's looking at their dad and their grandpa and their great grandpa, and they're all 5'5", is looking at it going, I can never be a professional disc golfer. I'm going to be 5'5". That is not a barrier for sure. You just have a challenge to overcome, which is you need to be really, really good, because somebody taller doesn't have to be quite as perfect to throw just as far as you, but because of physics. It does not mean you can't do it. Not by any stretch. By the way, Paige Pierce, best example. I think she's like 3'1", and she throws 450 off a tee pad, 470. But what? Mason Ford, or even not even Mason Ford. The best example is Emerson Keith. Emerson Keith and Mason Ford are both like in the 5'4", 5'5", 5'6" range, something like that, and they smash plenty far. So yeah, I'd be lying if I said taller doesn't give you an inherent advantage, but Paul Macbeth's he's under 6 foot, so it's not the only thing, believe me. All right, now to what you paid for. Now I'm going to go through the actual method of getting there. Like I said, almost everything I've talked about so far, you could have dug up in the videos, or I could have answered the Q&A questions. This method I'm going to teach you, you cannot find online. I don't put this online because it requires some back and forth. I can't just say, do this. You're going to, by the way, Paige isn't 3'1". I'm not saying Paige is short. Paige is actually normal height. I'm 6'7". Everybody looks 3'1" to me. The point is that she's not tall, she's not muscular, and she rips a disc because her technique is so good. So I was complimenting Paige, so please understand. Okay, these are the steps of how to throw, the correct way to get there. Couple things before I walk through the steps. Number one, like I said, and I continually say, I am not teaching you the end result. If I taught you the end result, do this, do this, do this, this is exactly how Eagle McMahon throws, you won't be able to do it. You've tried to do it. It doesn't work. What I have is a process to get there. And it's going to start by I'm going to be having you do some steps that are not correct. And they're certainly not how you're going to be throwing next weekend, next month. This is where you all have to trust me, because I'm the best in the world at this. I mean, I'm only saying that because I want you to trust me. Follow my steps, even if they don't seem correct, because I'm going to have you doing some things that if you go out to the course and do them, and you ask someone, hey, what do you think of this? They're going to say, he's showing you to do it that way? Nobody on tour does it that way. And they're correct. Because what I'm showing you now isn't how you're going to be throwing. It is a process to get there. And I'm being very emphatic about this because I want you to trust that when I show you these things, to do them knowing they are going to change. But this is the method that works. This is my life's work you're looking at here. If you follow this, it works. All right, so here's what we're going to do. What number one we're doing is every single step, you're going to do a step and you're going to stop. And every time you stop after each of these steps, you have to make sure that every part of your body is in the right position, which basically means following the rules we just discussed. And that's what you're going to be starting with. So here's how it's going to look. I'm going to walk through these steps as if I'm throwing this direction. Now remember, it's a 3-step run-up. So throwing this direction, I'm squared up 90 degrees to the line. My weight's above the hips. The disc is sitting right in front of me. My head is right where my shoulders are. My wrist is straight. And by the way, I should tell you this, my step-by-step description is also going to be nowhere near as long as the first part, but I'm going to be going into very specific details on these. But after I'm done with this, I'm going to get a timestamp for everybody, exactly where we're at, and then I'm going to give you a 2-minute step-by-step breakdown that you can go out to the course and you don't have to listen to all the long description, analogies, physics, etc. of what we're doing. You will have a 2-minute version. Do this, da, 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 do that, da, 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 do this, da, da, da. So I will give you a 2-minute clip that you're actually going to pull out your phone and work with, although you can always reference back to this. So just be aware that you're going to have that. Okay, squared up 90 degrees. Feet not together, but they're also not wide because you need room to take that first step. You're squared up 90 degrees from the target. Weights above your hips. The disc is right where you were going to pull across your body with the most strength. Your wrist is straight parallel to your body. Your head is with the shoulders. Other arms by your side. That's your starting place. Step 1. The disc goes up that line and you step up the line. And all you're going to do is both just going to go a little bit while you stay 90 degrees. That's all you do. Now, what you're not going to do on this step is you're not going to lean, right? You're not going to lean into that foot. You're going to keep balanced above your hips. You're also not going to start to rotate forward. You're just going to be 90 degrees. This first step is as easy as the disc and the foot go that way a little bit. Stop. You have to stop after every step. You got to be diligent about this. You stop. Is your weight above your hips? Yes. Is your head still to the shoulders? Yes. Is the disc still in the strongest line? Yes. Is your wrist still straight? Yes. You have to check if anything's not there. If you step forward in that wrist bend, you check everything. Oh, my wrist is bent the wrong way. Fix the wrist. Every step you must stop and put yourself in the exact right position. You're training your body to get into that position. So step 1, you're right here. Step 2, going that direction. You're going to X-step that direction while you're going to reach straight back 180 degrees opposite the direction you're throwing. And step 2 is going to look like this. Okay? Now, I need to do this again away from the camera because that is not the best angle for step 2. Okay. So, on step 1, and in this case, I'm throwing directly away from the camera. That's my line. So on step 1, the disc and the foot forward. On step 2, I'm going to X step up the line and reach back down the line. It's going to look like this. And that's it. My X step went up the line and my arm went up the line. That's the position I want to be in. Now, as far as where your shoulders are, and this is extremely important, well, it's all important, but this is extremely triple important. I'm going to walk through it again as if I'm going this direction. So step 1, they're both going to go forward. Step 2, I'm going to reach back. My shoulders at this point here are not going to be 90 degrees from the direction I'm throwing, because right now my shoulders are pointing at the camera, but I'm throwing that way. They're also not going to be 180 degrees from the direction I'm throwing. They're going to be halfway between. So at this point right here, my shoulders aren't here, they're not there, they're halfway. So the disc is straight back, my shoulders are rotated. At this point, you stop. Weight above the hips, yes. Arms on a line, yes. Head went with the body, yes. The disc is at the point, yes. Check the wrist, yes. Everything is in the right position after step 2. If it's not, by the way, if it's not in the right position, if the disc is up here, if your wrist is bent, if you're leaning back because you're not above your hips, you have to correct everything. That's step 2. You stopped. Fix everything. Now, the third step is the hardest step for everybody. So if you don't get this step right away, you're not alone. You're in really good company. It's the most important step. On step 3, what you're going to do is you're going to hold that position, and all you're going to do is step back with this leg and nothing else. You're going to just walk backwards and nothing else moves. Now, you're not going to stand here and just swing your leg back and forth with your body not moving. You're forward, you're back. But you see my shoulders, nothing's rotating and nothing's moving. That's what you're going to do on this step. It is critical that no part of your body moves. The biggest mistake players make at this point is their shoulders start to rotate. So right now my shoulder is at 45 degrees from the camera. It's also 45 degrees away from pointing straight back, right? So that's where my shoulders are pointing. When I take my step, my shoulders need to continue to point in that direction. Pause. Again, weight above the hips, arms straight. Disc at the pull line. Wrist is straight. Everything's in position. After I paused, cool. Now I can do the final step, which is to start the lawnmower, meaning throw the disc. And that's where the throw is going to happen. Now, a couple things to cover here that are very important. The first is most, if not all of you, might have noticed that I just showed you to do something totally different than I explained earlier. Because earlier when I explained this, I said, step 1, disc and foot forward. Step 2, the disc goes back, while the feet go step 2 and step 3. Meaning the plant hits the ground as the disc is fully back. Yet right here in the method that I'm teaching you, I'm having you go all the way back on step 2 and then leave the disc for an entire 1 count while you do step 3. The way I taught you earlier, with the disc going back slower and the feet going step 2 and 3, that is the correct way to throw. That is, some version of that is what the pros do when they throw. That is how you're eventually going to throw. That is not how you're going to throw for the next week. This is the method that works. I'm having you do something wrong, but for very good reason. Here's what I'm having you do. I'm getting your body in the exact position that I want it to be in when that plant foot hits the ground. When the plant foot hits the ground, I want you in that position. If you try to get into that position on the throw and put the steps together right now, it is very likely to not work. So what I'm having you do is getting into position, shoulders rotated, weight above the hips, arm on the line, wrist straight. Everything's in perfect position that it's going to be when I plant my foot. Perfect. It's in position for when I plant my foot. Okay, now I can plant my foot. All I got to do now is just not move it from that position, and bam, look at that. It's in the exact position you want it to be in. Because you got it there first, stop, and put it in the right position. There's a second thing happening here, though, too, is it is so critical that you plant your foot before anything else moves forward. Remember the whip cracking? The foot has to hit the ground before any part of your body has begun to move forward. And this is the thing that like 10% of the players in the world do correctly. By the way, those are the 10% of players who throw 500 feet. The other 90% of players start rotating their body before they plant. It's so important that you plant before you rotate. I'm effectively having you do this. You're in position. Everything's in the right position. Okay, now you're going to plant your foot. Okay, is your foot planted? Yeah, it's on the ground. Are you sure that your foot's on the ground? Yeah, I can see it. I'm sure my foot's on the ground. Okay. Okay, double check to make sure your foot's okay. My foot's on the ground. Okay, my foot's on the ground. Okay, you're sure your foot's on the ground. Okay, now you're allowed to throw. Like, I'm completely over exaggerating this to a point that's borderline annoying because it's so important and it's so difficult to do that I'm basically having you plant your foot, pause, check your foot, check everything before you're allowed to throw. Because the number one mistake that every player does, and I mean every player that I've worked with does, is when they start putting the throw together, they start rotating as they're planting. The middle of the whip and the hand of the whip go at the same time, the whip doesn't crack. We need to just completely separate step 3 from step 4 and just imprint, plant before the pull. You just have to do this. And what I've learned the most effective way is to basically just like beat it into you with the most over the top dramatic way of doing it. But you have my word that it works. All right. I'm going to walk through the exact 4 steps now, and then I'm going to explain big picture about what you're going to be doing, and I'll take more questions. But this is going to be the 2-minute explanation. So if you want to make a note on this, because when you go out to the course, you don't have to watch 2 hours of video, because I'm going to sum it all up in these 2 hours. This is what we work towards. We're at 2:06. Okay, so make a note, at 2 minutes and 7 seconds of this video is going to be the short breakdown, the step-by-step that you're going to pull out on your phone and you're going to look at when you're working on these steps, okay? Although I don't discourage you from, going back and watching it again, because the information's all good, especially if you have questions. But here's the 2 minutes you're going to take with you to the course. This is the key. All right. Step 1, square up 90 degrees from the target. Feet aren't touching, feet aren't apart, so you have room to step. Disc in front of you at the pull line, wrist is straight, weight above the hips, heads with the shoulders. You've checked everything, everything's fine. Step 1, the disc goes up the line, the foot goes up the line. You keep your weight above your hips. You don't lean into your front step, so you're still balanced. The disc is still on the pull line. Your head's still with the body because you're 90 degrees. Your wrist is still straight. But you only know this because you paused and checked. Everything's fine? Cool. Next step. You're going to reach back. At this point right here, you pause again. You're going to check. Is your weight above the hips? You're not leaning back. The disc is still on the pull line. It's not up here or down here. Your arm's on the line. The wrist is parallel to your arm. And your shoulders are at 45 degrees, meaning your back's not to the line you're throwing, and it's not parallel to the line you're throwing. It's halfway in between. Once you're in position here, you're allowed to do the next step, which is step back. When you step back, everything from the waist up stays the same, and all you're going to do is step. Now, what you're not going to do is leave your body in position and just move the leg. You're also not going to bounce. You're going to take a step straight back. Stop. Is your weight still above the hips? Is your wrist straight? Is it this still on the pull line? Is your head still with the body? And most important, are your shoulders still at 45 degrees? If they are, and that plant foot is on the ground, after pausing and checking, then all you're going to do is start the lawnmower. You're going to pull that disc like you're starting a lawnmower, and your pinky is going to remain down after you throw the disc. Those are the steps that you're going to do. Now, a couple things. Number 1, this is my challenge for all of you. And this, by the way, is a big ask of you, because every single person wants to put these steps together. I mean, that's the most natural thing in the world. You paid for this. You obviously love disc golf. You want to get better. Obviously, we want to get better quicker, not longer. I'm asking you to not put those steps together. For sure, Absolutely not for the next week. If you try to put the steps together in the next week, it's likely going to screw you up. And the solve is going to be stop putting the steps together. Even if you think you got it, or even if you know that you got the steps, I still want you to spend 1 week. Move, pause, step, pause. Even if you got it, you're not going to hurt yourself by further imprinting all these steps in there. Then what you're going to do? You're going to send form review videos, or you're going to upload form review videos. Do not upload a form review video with the whole throw that says, look, everybody, do I got this? No. I want form review videos from everybody where you're going to go step, pause, etc. Because that way you're going to do that, and I want you to do it in slow motion. Because that way all the other students, the trainers, myself can look at it, and we can really start to fine tune this. Because remember what I said? If you do A and B and C correctly, you will automatically move correctly on your own between A and B and C. Well, each of those steps where we're pausing is the A and the B and the C. You pause, we check. We look to see, was your weight above your hips? Was your wrist straight? Are you following the rules? If you're doing those things correctly, you're automatically moving between the steps correctly. The disc is going to rip out of your hand. The nose is not going to be up. It's going to hit the line you're aiming, and the disc is going to snap off your fingertips. You're going to just imprint these steps for the next week. Remember, I'm not telling you to do this for the whole 6 months. It's 1 week. But at the end of the week, next Tuesday when we get back together, then I'm going to first, and these classes from here on out are about an hour long each. So they're shorter, but from here, the next class a week from now is going to be cool. Now that you did this for a week and you've posted several form reviews to make sure everything's right, now here's how we modify it so it looks more like the correct throw with the arm going back slower. And here's the roadmap to starting to put everything together. Because as a process, you can put these together and do the whole throw. There are very clear indicators of whether or not you got it or you don't, and have to go back to step by step, not for 6 months, but for another day or another hour. But I have a process of when to evolve, but just you're not allowed to do this for the next week. And again, I'm challenging you because it's really hard to do, to be diligent or disciplined, I should say, to do this. But if you do this, that is how you're going to get better faster. The final thing, even when you put the steps together, even if every single one of you looked identical on the form videos from what I'm teaching, which actually is kind of what I want you to do, is to be identical to how I'm doing on the actual form videos, or as far as what I'm teaching. But your throws are all going to look a little bit different when you're done, because once you get these core things down, then you're going to start to migrate into how your body wants to move. I'll just give you one example of this. I'm having you reach back, throwing that direction. Your head's going to go to your shoulders, and your head's going to go all the way back here. It is highly likely that on your backswing, your head's not here. Your backswing is probably going to wind up more like this when it's done. Not like this. It's going to be more like this. That's the position your body's going to move into. But I'm not starting you there because everybody's body isn't going to go to that position. I can't tell you to go to that position. I'm saying to you, one of the rules is do nothing with your head, allow it to go with the body. Therefore, your head's all the way back here because I'm making sure that you're not keeping your head forward because that is killing your power. So we're starting with the rule, but it'll evolve differently than that. So don't think, well, first off, when you start doing these throws, they're actually going to blow your mind how well it actually works when you feel snap and you hit your lines with the nose flat. But just know that eventually you will evolve into your own style and your own movement because the rules are imprinted. And that is the method. That is the first step in the method that works. All right. Questions? Your throw is going to look interesting at league this week. Okay, so here's the thing. In a perfect world, if I had complete control, I would say don't go to league this week or don't play any tournaments this week because you're working on a new technique. It's really hard to go to league and it's like, well, I'm just going to work on my technique this week. But then that person's on your card that like always talks shit when they beat you, and you're like, I can't let this person beat me. So, it's hard to make yourself do. So in a best case scenario, you just put off the competition for the week. Now, it's also a lot of people are playing disc golf more for fun, and this is not the most you're taking this class to get better, but it's not the most important thing in your world. Your Tuesday league with your friends is far more important. It's not that you can't go to league. Just be aware that's going to be a little minor setback because when you go to league, you're probably going to wind up throwing with your old technique because this is step, plant, step, plant. You're probably not going to be doing that on the tee pads at league night. You're not. So if you go to league night, you're taking a step back with your old technique, which means then you have to go back and work on a new technique. You took a step backwards to do the old technique again. Here's the thing I'll tell you is that there's no hurry on this. So for instance, if you play 3 tournaments a year and one of those tournaments is this coming weekend, there's no hurry. It was a 6-month class. There's no hurry to work on this today because we have 1 week to work on backhand. Just put this aside, play your tournament, play your game, and then on Monday start it. There's no time frame on this. But the step-by-step is what's going to work. And by the way, if you do this step-by-step with people watching, you will have people raise an eyebrow and say, that doesn't look right. Again, they're right. It isn't right. They just haven't been here for the whole 2 hours where I've explained to them that what I'm showing you is a process to get there. It's not the end result. So my recommendation is don't play league. And if you do play league, it's not the end of the world. Should I wait till after a tournament Saturday? It's up to you, but it's like if you work on something, you go to the tournament, you're going to take a step backwards. It's not going to hurt you, but it's not. I'm totally on the fence with this. It's not going to kill you to play the tournament this weekend and wait till afterwards for sure. If there's no tournaments coming up after this for a couple weeks, then it doesn't hurt to wait until Sunday. Especially if that tournament's important to you. Changing your technique 3 days before might make you better, but it also might make you worse in the short term. Is it important to be walking backwards in these steps? Well, you're not walking backwards. You're just going to you're going to walk sideways, then you're going to rotate backwards, then you're going to step backwards, and then you're going to rotate forward. So you're just basically, yes. I guess, yes, put your body in those positions. Don't worry about your foot being turned totally backwards or anything like that. Your feet are going to go where your feet go. Remember, if you try to put your feet in a certain position, you could possibly even hurt yourself. Let your feet go where they want to go. I don't know if I mentioned this earlier. If I didn't mention this, forgive me. This is what I forgot in the last group. This is so important. Do not throw anything when you're working on this at 100% power. If you throw with 100% power, you will revert back to your old technique. It's impossible to throw full power with something you're working on. So throw like 70% power as well, 60% power. Don't throw real hard when you're working on this. That does not mean you always throw with 80% power like you might do in, let's say, ball golf, 80% swing. No, you can throw the disc with full power once you have the timing down and your technique. But in learning it, it's say 60%. The final step of the throw is a standstill throw. You are correct. So I don't teach as a rule that you should learn to do a standstill first. But technically what you're actually saying is correct. It is a standstill throw because you paused. But I don't view it as just learning a standstill throw because you did every single step up to that point. So you're still working on the complete throw. And even a standstill throw, you wouldn't start a standstill throw from here. You would start a standstill throw by reaching back and throwing, which is definitely what you're not doing. One of the reasons for working on the separate steps is that there's no such thing as a disc golf throw. There are just a series of individual steps that when you put them together look like a throw. Like for instance, in ball golf, there's not a golf swing in ball golf. There's a backswing, completed, done. Begin forward swing. Now, when you put them together, it looks like there's this thing called a golf swing, but there are two separate steps. I'm not an expert in golf, but I believe that's correct. So it's the same thing. So I'm having you separate the steps. Eventually, they are going to go together and they're going to look smooth like it's all part of one throw, but really it's just a series of steps. Let's see. I'm a right-hander. With my prior backhand form before today's training, my right shoulder delts kill me after throwing. With the new technique, will my shoulder pain slowly disappear? So I'm always very tentative about answering questions regarding injuries because I cannot tell you if you have tendonitis. I can't tell you if you have scar tissue built up. I can't tell you if you have an injury that's your shoulder was dislocated at some point or I can't tell you that the pain's going to go away. What I can tell you is it's likely to, not because I'm treating your injury, but because you're not doing anything that is making your body move in an unnatural motion. A lot of the players that get hurt, when you watch them throw, they don't look smooth at all. Everything's a very jerky motion. And when they do that, you're definitely just going to put more strain on your joints. That does not mean that I guarantee that you're not going to hurt from doing this. So here's my suggestion on this. Ease into it very slowly. I'm just going to give you the most safe approach, but it's fine. Remember, we have 6 months to work at this. This is not like a private lesson where you're like, oh, my shoulder's hurting, but I paid for this hour or something like that. That's not what this is. There's no time frame or pace that we're working on things. So ease into this slowly. If it's hurting, back off. Take some time. We're in no rush at all. In my experience, if you're hurting and you keep throwing, it doesn't work itself out because you're throwing. It's far more likely that you're going to hurt yourself by throwing more. So what I want you to do is ease into it, do it slowly, follow the technique, which should be the most low impact movement possible, and then we'll cross the bridge later. So in other words, if it is still hurting in a week or in a couple weeks, if every time you go out and throw it hurts, then we can look at that. Now, the one thing I will do without trying to pretend I'm a doctor, one nice thing about disc golf is there are workarounds. So I can tell you that proper mechanics shouldn't hurt you, but prior injuries or other things might still be a problem. But the nice thing about disc golf is that I can't tell you why something's hurting your arm, but I can tell you that if doing this hurts, how about if you try this? And it's very possible that something else won't hurt. And that something else might not even be the optimal way to throw. But if the option is being hurt or maybe quitting the game because your shoulder hurts when you play or doing something that's not optimal, but it doesn't hurt, and by the way, which might give yourself your shoulder time to heal, then we can do that. So there's, again, not playing doctor, but there are workarounds. So let's start with doing the mechanics correctly, not throwing 100%, ease into it. But please communicate with me if something's not working. Don't just go, my shoulder hurts, and just like drop out of the class. Talk to me. There are alternate solutions. I've worked with so many people. I've seen everything. So we can definitely try different things. Okay. You've been told repeatedly that you don't follow through. You said it's natural. Would you elaborate? Yeah, I mean, here's what I'm guessing is happening. So it is natural to follow through in the sense that if you pulled the disc and it left your hand right here, you couldn't stop right here if you wanted to. Your arm is going to keep going. What I suspect they're saying to you, and I could be wrong, but this is what the form reviews are for. I'm guessing that what they're saying is this, that when you throw, you're doing something like this. Oh, hold on, let me turn the camera down so we get full body. Instead, you're doing something like this. 1, 2, 3. Right? Your arm followed through, but it doesn't look like it because once your arm gets to this point, like your arm, if I'm facing this direction, is very mobile to here, but right about here, it doesn't go much further than here. So if you plant your foot and don't do anything with your body, your arm's going to stop. It gives the appearance of not following through, but the reason it didn't follow through is because your body didn't follow through. So here's what they probably mean is that what you need to do is throw and then let your body continue its motion. So when I say do 6 things and don't do anything else, you stopping your body from moving is by definition doing something else. Because if you didn't stop yourself, your momentum will carry you through. So I think that's what they're referring to. So here's my thing. This is what's so great about the way this is set up with the form reviews. So those are the types of questions where I can give you general answers, but you're also just going to shoot a video and we can look at it and see. It's pretty cool. We'll figure everything out. I'm like Dr. House. Like, I love challenges. I find so much fun in solving things. So let's see. How much time or reps should practice the method? Okay, so that's a great question. The answer is the more you do it, the better you'll get. Like, right? I mean, if you go practice it 4 times a week instead of 1, you're going to get better. But in the real world, if you have a career and kids and God forbid other hobbies and responsibilities, that may not be possible. Maybe you can only get out 1 day a week. You're still going to improve dramatically in 1 day a week. But 2 days a week is better than 1. Now, it's a point of diminishing return. You go out to the field for 4 hours and you start to get sore. That's not going to help you. But I think what you're probably asking is, how much time commitment do I really need to put into this? And the only answer is, it's like anything else. If you put in more time, you'll get better. You take 1 hour-long Taekwondo class a week versus 3 2-hour Taekwondo classes a week, you get way better Taekwondo in 6 hours than 1. It's no different. So more time is better. I will tell you this, that in a real world where you're trying to do other things, everything I'm teaching will allow you to accelerate as quickly as possible. Like the learning curve is as flat as it could possibly be this way. Because even though we talked for 2 hours, when I walked through the steps and I put them in a 2-minute breakdown, it should be like, that's pretty reasonable. And when you do that, the throw works like that. If you pull more, is to pull more of the hips or the arm pulling the disc through? I feel like I pulled a lot of arm. Yeah, plant your foot, start the lawnmower. Don't ever think about your hips again. And I can't stress this enough. Don't be posting that I'm saying hips aren't important, because everybody will shoot you down and they'll think that I'm an idiot. I am not saying hips aren't important. I'm saying that the hips will happen automatically. If you have a kid and you teach them how to start a lawnmower, and you told them stand like this, grab the cord and pull, and they pulled and that lawnmower started up. And then you said to them, at what point did you engage your hips? They would look at you like, what are you talking about? I pulled the cord. Well, they couldn't have started the lawnmower had their hips not been used, right? They're not strong enough. But as far as knowing what your hips are actually doing or consciously thinking about it isn't something that happens. So I'm saying your hips are important, but if you plant first and then start that lawnmower, the hips will happen automatically. Are we releasing the disc in the drill? Yes, you are throwing the disc. And what should you be looking for? Do you have a recommended disc type for this type of drill? Okay. So yes, you're going to be throwing the disc. The three main things you're going to be looking for is number one, you want to hit your lines. Number two, you want the nose to not be up. Basically, by that I mean when the disc is flying away from you, doesn't matter what angle it is, you should see this much of the disc. You should not be seeing this part of the disc when it flies. Or it starts to fade and then you start to see this part of the disc, right? So it should hit your lines. The nose should not be up when it flies, and you should feel snap on your hands. Like you should feel that disc rip out of your fingers. A snap is not audible. Snap is a feel, but you should feel the snap coming off your hands. Make a note, please. I want to make a short video for everybody about the three things to look for in the throw. I talked about it on a later video when to move forward, about when to go back to step by step if it's not working. But make a note. I want to make a video now about things. So I think it makes sense to talk about now. That's a great question because that actually tells me that I should be mentioning what things to look for now instead of saying just do them. That's a little bit vague, so I appreciate the question. I'm still learning. All right. Do you recommend doing this in a field or using a batting net because we aren't focused on the flight of the disc? So the throwing in a field and throwing into the net both have advantages. The field is nice because you get to see the flight of the disc. You can be sure you hit your line. You can see if the nose is up on the disc because you're watching the disc fly. It's useful to get to see the disc fly. However, throwing in a field can be boring. It's basically 100 degrees and humid everywhere in the country right now. It's far less fun to throw out in a field in general. I mean, some people love it, but generally speaking, it's really hard in the middle, like in July, almost anywhere in the country. And it also takes a lot longer to get fewer throws. I mean, you go out to a field and throw 20 shots 5 times, it's going to take you like 45 minutes. Well, you can throw 100 shots in 8 minutes into a net. So there's pros and cons of both. So I would say you want to do a mixture of both. You do want to throw in the field sometimes because you want to get feedback of the disc flying. However, you can get reps into a net. You can go out, but you can throw a pizza in the oven for 12 minutes and go out there and throw 40 shots into a net. Whereas you would have to drive out to a field, get your discs out, throw them, find them, walk back, count your discs, realize that you're missing one, go back, look for that one, find that one, go throw them again. So, you know, I love throwing into a net. I think it's fantastic, but you just can't only throw into a net. I think both is good. All right, everybody. So we made it 2.5 hours. Told you this was going to be a longer class. The questions were fantastic. I'm not rushing through anybody on this. You didn't pay for my time. You paid for what you're here to accomplish. And I can't put a time limit on that because that's, well, it just doesn't work. So the 2 things I want you to do this week. Number 1, pause between every step. You got to do this. Trust me on this one. Move, pause, move, pause, move, pause. Be diligent about doing that. And number 2, become active in the group. I encourage you to do that. Some of you may be shy about putting video of yourself up and throwing, especially if if you're new and you think the form's bad. You know, you have all the information to watch a video of yourself and judge yourself. So if you don't put a video of yourself throwing, you can still get a lot out of this. But I would encourage you to take a risk and put the videos up there. No one's going to laugh. No one's going to make fun of you. Every single person throwing, no matter how bad you throw, without exception, will say, I threw like that when I started. That's all of us. Like nobody stepped out of the car and was good. So please do that. Please post if you can. But if you can't, you can still get give feedback and participate. But those are the things. Work on those steps. You have my word that this works, and we'll see you next week. And that's when we put all the throws together. Thank you. Avoid the humidity and mosquitoes. There you go. All right. Thanks, everyone. And by the way, if I hang up and then you realize, oh, I forgot to ask something, that's what the group's for. Every question you post will get answered. So yeah, don't worry about it. All right. Thanks, everybody. You're going to have a good time. It's going to work too. Bye.